What was I to do if I trespassed against a brother under the law of Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Numbers chapter 5. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 10. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they put out of the camp every leper, everyone who has a discharge, and whoever becomes defiled by a corpse. You shall put out both male and female. You shall put them outside the camp, that they may not defile their camps in the midst of which I dwell. And the children of Israel did so, and put them outside the camp, as the Lord spoke to Moses. So the children of Israel did. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel. When a man or woman commits any sin that men commit in unfaithfulness against the Lord, and that person is guilty, then he shall confess the sin which he has committed. He shall make restitution for his trespass in full, plus 1/5 of it, and give it to the one he has wronged. But if the man has no relative to whom restitution may be made for the wrong, the restitution for the wrong must go to the Lord for the priest, in addition to the ram of atonement, with which atonement is made for him. Every offering of all the holy things of the children of Israel, which they bring to the priest, shall be his. And every man's holy things shall be his. Whatever any man gives to the priest shall be his. Up to this point in Numbers, we've seen a census of the nation of Israel in order to determine the size of their armies, and a census of the Levites in order to determine their numbers for service in the tabernacle. We need not remember the exact numbers, but we should remember that such a census took place, as well as the purpose of the census. Coming now to chapter 5, we get some further explanations of the laws that we saw in Leviticus, as well as some new laws that weren't mentioned there. Just like it was in Leviticus, we point out that we are not under the authority of this law, meaning the laws don't apply to us, but some principles that might help us apply to the law of Christ, which is our law, might be found in these texts. If you recall from Leviticus, in chapters 13 and 14, we covered in detail the laws surrounding leprosy. We found out that the leper was to be taken outside the camp until their leprosy was cleansed. From chapter 15, we studied the laws concerning discharges of blood. From that chapter, we did not get instructions that such people would be forced to remain outside the camp until their discharge is cleansed, but we do here in Numbers 5, so those would be the instructions of God. And then we also find out that whoever is defiled by a corpse, instructions for which aren't given in detail until later in Numbers, is also confined to living outside the camp for the period of their defilement is completed. Now that we realize that there were 4 different camps in Israel, the camp of Judah, the camp of Reuben, the camp of Ephraim, and the camp of Dan, we gain a fuller understanding of what outside the camp means. When Israel arrives in Canaan and settles there, the city would be a substitute for the camp. It appears, though, from the language in Numbers 5 that Israel, although they received the command, hadn't yet fully obeyed it, which is why God commanded it here. Israel obeyed the command of the Lord and put out any who was defiled so that the camps the Lord dwelt in wouldn't be defiled. The Lord is holy, and he will not associate with anything that is defiled, hence why these instructions were given. How many people Israel put out, we don't know. Verses 5 to 10 gives us further instructions as it concerns the trespass offering. If you go back to Leviticus 6 on your own time, you can reread about what the trespass offering was and when it was needed to be offered, but for our purposes, we simply need to know that it was offered when you committed a sin against your brother in which restitution needed to be paid. Notice that even though one may sin against their brother, the sin is also against God. We saw that in the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife in Genesis, where Joseph wouldn't even sleep with Potiphar's wife and commit a great wickedness against God. When a person committed a trespass against the Lord and is guilty, the first thing he must do is confess his sin. The New Testament in 1 John 1 verse 9 also would give this instruction to the Christian. With the trespass offering, not only were you to pay restitution for what was taken, though, you would pay a fine of 20% on top of it. This, of course, should act as a deterrent for committing trespasses. The restitution would be given to the one you wronged. But what if the person had died, moved out of the area, or you've lost contact with them and don't know where they are? Well, you're to locate his family and pay them the restitution. What if a person has no family? Do I get to keep what I stole? No, it must be offered to the Lord for use by the priest in addition to the ram of atonement that was already required. God supplied for the needs of the priests, and so if something was offered to the Lord but not burned on the altar, usually it went to the possession of the priest for his use. Nobody was to profit from sin, a principle that Christians should live by today. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers chapter 5, verses 11 to 15, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.